from the Unshackled studios in Melbourne. This is WilmsFront, brought to you by the Unshackled.net. Now here's Tim Wilms.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back for this week's WilmsFront featured interview show on this Sunday, the 19th of March, 2023. We are live on YouTube on the Unshackled's channel, the Tim Wilms D Live channel, and of course, the WilmsFront Odyssey channel. Also live on Entropy, where you can send through a question for my guest tonight, or even better yet, send through a super chat to support the show. It is 8:30 p.m. here in Melbourne, Victoria, but tonight's focus will be north of the Murray with the New South Wales state election less than a week away on Saturday, the 25th of March. Remember, the Unshackled will be broadcasting election night live stream at 6 p.m. when the polls close. The 93-seat lower house result will decide if Premier Dominic Perrottet, a Liberal, is re-elected, or if the Labor opposition leader Chris Minns ends 12 years of coalition government. But it is the makeup of the 42-member upper house, where 21 will be elected via proportional representation this election. The makeup of that house will determine who holds the government to account. A pro-freedom crossbench would ensure a check on both government power and the legislation it intends to pass. My guest tonight is lead candidate of the New South Wales Group B for the Legislative Council, National Director of the United Australia Party, and the former federal member for Hughes, Craig Kelly. Welcome back to WilmsFront.
Yeah, no, great to be with you tonight on a rather warm Sydney's evening today. We had a bit of a warm day here in Sydney, so it's back to our normal summer's weather, or late early autumn weather. It's we sort of had such a cold and mild summer that a lot of people have forgotten what a warm day's like.
Oh, it's been warm here in Melbourne. We had a 30-plus day yesterday. The AFL players, they were playing in the summer heat, which is almost unheard of.
Yeah, look, it's we have had in Sydney here probably, I think, our mildest or our coolest summer on record. That's even with the Bureau of Meteorology relocating Sydney's temperature gauge, where Sydney's official temperatures are taken, relocating it to a new location which measures at least a degree hotter, so they can inflate the temperatures. But even taking that into account, we've really had a cool summer. So it's actually a pleasant change, a little bit of warm weather, I think, but it's made everyone sort of struggle a little bit today.
Oh, well, it's great we're able to enjoy it now, which sadly wasn't the case throughout large parts of 2020 and 2021. I first spoke to you back in May 2020. I mean, you were still in the Liberal Party in that time. We'd just come out of the first national lockdown, and as we now know, it got a whole lot worse with more lockdowns. I mean, my home city, Victoria, was the world's most locked down and probably the most brutally locked down, and then followed the mask and vaccine mandates and passport. It really was a horrific part of Australia's history.
It will go down as one of the dark chapters of Australia's history, when our senior politicians and health bureaucrats ignored the science. Remember, there was absolutely no science behind these lockdowns whatsoever. It was contrary to all the other pandemic preparations that had been discussed. It was done for political reasons, and a lot of people suffered. A lot of people lost their businesses. There was a lot of hardship that was occurred simply because a few politicians thought they could make themselves more popular in the short term.
And as we were saying, that people are out enjoying the heat. The whole horror seems to have been memory hold. I mean, you go to out anywhere. I mean, you still, like, the COVID legacy is that you still see a number of people wearing masks, including alone in their cars. But it's like it never happened, the way that most people are living now, but there's still people who are denied employment. There's still vaccine mandates in Victoria, New South Wales, various other states in various occupations. For some people, their life it's still upside down.
Look, this is beyond an outrage that here we are in March 2023, and we've got companies and government bureaucracies still enforcing vaccine mandates. Look, if you go back to the very start of the COVID period, the only excuse for vaccine mandates, and then I'll say excuse because it was always a breach of human rights to put in some standard or to use coercion to force someone to undergo a medical intervention, is an abuse of human rights. There's a treaty that Australia signed up to called the International Treaty on Bioethics and Human Rights, which specifically says that you can't use coercion or prejudice or disadvantage to force someone to undergo a medical intervention. And that's exactly what these mandates are. But the only excuse at the time was, we need these mandates in place because they will stop transmission. That was the only excuse that they had for the mandates. Now we can see that the science is now 100% clear on that. These vaccines do not reduce transmission of the virus. And not only do they not also infection, again, the studies are clear on this now. The more times you've been injected, the more likely you actually are to have COVID. So if you want to say to have a mandate in a workplace, the vaccine-free workers are less likely to have COVID and therefore less likely to transmit it to someone. So that there is just no excuse for these mandates. It is a small group of vaccine fanatics that will not admit that they were wrong and that do not care that they are abusing human rights and do not care about the suffering and hardship they are causing to their fellow Australians. These people are an absolute disgrace and they need to be called out, every single one of them.
And we had the Prime Minister, former Prime Minister, who was the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, who, made it untenable for you to remain in the Liberal Party, tried to completely rewrite history, which is typical Scott Morrison, which is why even many on the right, conservatives, don't miss him, saying that, my government never supported any vaccine mandate apart from these sensitive settings, and that wasn't the health advice we received. It was just extraordinary.
Well, just also go back one step. If you're sitting somewhere in New South Wales or Victoria or anywhere in Australia tonight, there are ambulance officers that are not working because they've been mandated out of their jobs. So ambulance services are not fully resourced as they should otherwise be. So if you have a medical emergency or someone in your family has a medical emergency tonight and you have to dial 000 and you pick up the phone and request an ambulance to come to your house, that ambulance is likely to be delayed or may not come at all because ambulance drivers that are unvaccinated are sitting at home being prevented from working by state premiers. So these people that are maintaining these vaccine mandates are actually putting lives at risk. This is how desperate this situation is. Not only is it against the science and abuse of human rights, these people are so pig-headed and they are so stubborn, they are continuing to put lives at risk. We saw in Victoria a report earlier this year. They said there was 30-something deaths that could be attributed to delays in ambulances turning up to people. Now, the delays in those ambulances, because you had ambulance officers sitting at home that had been told by Dan Andrews' regime that they couldn't go to work because they hadn't undergone a medical intervention. Dan Andrews and his regime should be responsible, and those people that put those mandates in, for every one of those 30 deaths of their fellow Australians, and they're continuing today across Australia because of this mad fanaticism. Now, when it comes to the Prime Minister, I was just flabbergasted when I saw that interview. Talk about trying to rewrite history. So but the Prime Minister, I didn't put any vaccine mandates into place. Well, hang on a minute. I can remember there was a time where you couldn't leave the country unless you'd been fully so-called what was the term, fully injected, which is a term. Fully injected used to mean 2, then it means 3. Right? So the Prime Minister, the federal government controls the borders of this country. They put in regulations that prevented, North Korea, Cuba style of interventions that prevented Australians from leaving their country unless they had a vaccine passport. They are the regulations that Scott Morrison put in. And Scott Morrison also put in regulations that threw Novak Djokovic out of this country because he decided he didn't want to go undergo an experimental medical intervention. That was the Prime Minister of this country throwing Djokovic out of the place because he hadn't had because he was mandated to have an injection. And the Prime Minister said, I had nothing to do with this. It's just the Prime Minister was secretly cheering on every state government mandate, every company that put a mandate in. The Prime Minister was cheering it on, and he made it possible by changing the laws in the federal parliament that allowed people to access private medical records. It was just absolutely outrageous that from the former Prime Minister. I think the reason he's done it is he knows now, he's seeing the writing, he's seeing the evidence of how catastrophic these vaccine mandates were, how people have actually lost their lives because of them. I've spoken to several parents of young teenagers and people in their 20s, parents that have lost their child because, and I've asked them, they died shortly after being injected. And it's very clear that although you can never prove these things 100%, it's very clear that the vaccines were, highly probable cause of their death. And you ask the parents, would have they got injected but for these mandates? And they say no. So we've had Australians that have lost their lives because of these vaccine mandates. The Prime Minister now knows this. He knows how wrong he was. And I think he's trying to backpedal and rewrite history to create himself an alibi, because there will be a day of reckoning in this. Every day, more and more people are waking up. Every day, the evidence becomes clearer. How detrimental these vaccine mandates were, how many in our public service committed malfeasance, how these vaccine companies committed fraud, how they manipulated their study results, how they left people that were injured, catastrophically injured by these vaccines, how they left them out of the studies, how they never conducted things like carcinogenic studies originally, how the data shows that the original Pfizer trial data actually shows that you are more likely to die if you're in the vaccinated group than if you're in the placebo group. Now, all these things they hid from the public and they lied. These people have got to be held to account for the catastrophic damage that they've done to lives and also what they've done to the economy of this country.
And also, Scott Morrison, his government directed coalition MPs and senators to vote against Pauline Hanson and Malcolm Roberts' bill to repeal or ban vaccine mandates and passports. There was 5 coalition senators who defied him. Shout out to Alex Antic, Jared Rennick. She was dumped, Conchetta Veravanti-Wells, so was Sam McMahon, and Matt Canavan's also there from the National Party as well.
Well, I introduced the original bills into the House of Representatives. 2 separate bills I introduced that would have made vaccine passports, vaccine mandates. One would have made it simply illegal. The second one was to bring in that provision of international human rights law, so you could have declared anyone, which would have made anyone putting in a vaccine mandate an abuser of human rights under Australian law, and therefore liable for sanctions because of that. I put those 2 bills before the House of Representatives, and Pauline from One Nation was good. She copied those bills almost word for word, but I'm very grateful for her to do that, and took them later to the Senate. But in the House of Reps, I only had George Christensen and Lou O'Brien from the Nationals support me. The rest of the Liberal Party had the opportunity to vote against and to stop these vaccine mandates, to stop this abuse of human rights, to stop this violations of people's freedoms. They had multiple opportunities to vote with me in that House of Representatives. They also had multiple opportunities later in the Senate. and every time they elected to vote against them. Mate, look, it should be very clear. Morrison had limited scope to bring in vaccine mandates, but he did, which he did with at the time there for leaving the country. But he had the power absolutely to stop them. He had that power. There were numerous ways under the Constitution that he had constitutional power to end the vaccine mandates across every state in both the public sector and the private sector. And he didn't do so because he wanted to see as many Australians injected to get that number as high as he possibly could, so he could use it as a way to try and advance his own political fortunes in the short term. And we see what eventually happened in the long term when you do that.
There's, as you said, there's also private companies still have vaccine mandates in place. I spoke previously with Graham Hood. Qantas still has its vaccine mandate for workers, and the Coles, they recently, after everybody pointed out their hypocrisy with their "everyone welcome at our table" ads, their health advice changed, that they no longer mandating the vaccines or requiring that their staff have had 2 COVID vaccines.
Let's firstly go to Qantas. Qantas, by firstly implementing them at all, but continuing with those vaccine mandates today, Qantas are abusers of human rights. I know Qantas like to be this woke company that, we saw what they did in Australian rugby in Israel Folau. They love to be this woke company that thinks they are so wonderful and so virtuous. Let's be very clear. Qantas are abusers of human rights. So if you are sitting on the board of Qantas, you are sitting on the board of company and sanctioning decisions that are an abuse of human rights. History will condemn these directors and these senior managers of Qantas for what they have done and how they have abused human rights. They'll be recorded for all time as abusers of human rights, and they deserve every little bit of bad publicity that they get, because their conduct has been absolutely shocking in this. What they did to Graham Hood and other pilots, forcing them out of the industry that they loved and destroying people's careers, really should be. These people really need to be held to account. In my opinion, not only do these mandates have to end, but all these human rights abusing companies like Qantas should be forced to back pay every person that they forced out of the job that didn't, that they tried to use coercion to force them to undergo a medical intervention. They should be made to back pay these people.
Well, again, that is something that the government, through Fair Work Act, could implement, but we certainly aren't expecting that. Now,
just one thing I'll bring up on that issue. Recently, we had the Premier of New South Wales. Now, we know that Dan Andrews down there is a complete maniac, just ignores the science and ran around election night saying, the vaccines work,
Oh, he said that we believe in science, and that my victory is a vindication for the science.
Yeah, he believes anyone that goes around saying these COVID vaccine works doesn't believe in the science. They believe in superstition. That's what they believe in, because the science is absolutely crystal clear. The more you're injected with these things, the more likely, this is not Craig Kelly making this up, this is a study published in The Lancet. The more injections that you have over time, the more likely you are to contract COVID. That's peer-reviewed science today, and that damages. But getting on to the New South Wales Premier, he said recently in an interview, I'm against the mandates. He said, I'm against them all. So I don't believe in them. And then he said, I don't have the power to do anything about them. Now, again, either the man is, this is the Premier of the state, Dominic Perrottet, either the man is completely incompetent or he's completely unfit to be the Premier of this state. Firstly, in the public sector, he can call these bureaucrats into his office and say, tell you what, you've got until 3 o'clock this afternoon or end of business this afternoon to end those mandates. And if you don't, by 9 o'clock, you'll be out of a job. That's the power he has as Premier. He can bring these department heads in, bring the ministers in, lay the law down to them. But to say he can't do anything is just, it's a pathetic weakness. It shows he's unfit to be premier. Someone that is that weak, that won't stand up for his beliefs, should not be the premier of this state. And the second way he can do it, he's got the legislative power. There's a New South Wales Discrimination Act, which I'm sure it's a state-based act. I'm sure there's a similar act in Victoria that basically says you cannot discriminate against someone, right, in the workplace because of age, sex, marital status, disability status, carers' responsibilities, and even transgender issues. All they have to do is take COVID vaccine status, clip it on to those other things you can't, makes it unlawful to discriminate in the workplace. And the New South Wales Premier, Dominic Perrottet, could outlaw these vaccine mandates through the Parliament in the private sector if he had the backbone to do so. But he's shown he doesn't have the backbone. He doesn't have the spine. He doesn't have the conviction of his beliefs. And therefore, I think he's forfeited his right to be Premier of this state.
And I recall his health minister, Brad Hazzard, who thankfully is retiring.
Don't get me started here. You wind me right up when you start talking about that bloke.
But I recall that couldn't he turn your lives upside down with just a stroke of a pen, a public health order? Yet Dominic Perrottet is powerless, so I have no power to remove these mandates.
Look, Mr. Brad Hazzard, thankfully, he's retiring from politics at this election. His pomposity, his arrogance, his ignorance of the facts and the data has just been something that I thought I would never see from a Liberal member of Parliament. He has done such damage to the Liberal Party here in New South Wales. He has pushed tens of thousands of people away from the Liberal Party that will never vote for the Liberal Party again because of the conduct of this bloke. He got the nickname Brad Health Hazard because the decisions that he put in, the aggressive nature that he went about things, the refusal to, they talk about someone that buries their head in the sand and refuses to listen to the evidence. And one of the last things that Hazzard did was we had a report in New South Wales that they used to put it out weekly, and it was hospitalisations and ICU admissions by vaccination status. And so every week you would get a report, and for week after week after week, it would show the number of people in New South Wales with COVID hospitalised on ICU was 0 or 1 or 0.2, right? As compared to the hospitalisation of the people that had 4 doses or more was in the hundreds. In fact, the last report they put out, there was 800 and something people in hospital in New South Wales with COVID that had been jabbed 4 times or more, and 0 are ducking. They couldn't find a single person in New South Wales hospital with COVID that was vaccine free. And so what did Hazzard and the New South Wales bureaucrats do? They hid the data. They're now putting that report out, and they've hid the data from the New South Wales public because they're embarrassed by it. It shows they were wrong. So in typical, I would say, corrupt, bureaucratic fashion, they've decided to hide the data from the New South Wales public.
Yes, I have noticed in my own research that there was that change in reporting. It would will certainly go over a lot of mainstream reporters' heads, but it's certainly noteworthy.
Oh, well, you expect the ABC to report on this? We're talking about the mainstream media. The conduct of the mainstream media during this COVID period, especially led by the ABC, has been an absolute disgrace. Absolute disgrace. They have been shills for the vaccine industry, shills for Big Pharma. They have censored and they have silenced open and free debate. And they put things, the misinformation that the ABC has put to air time and time again has been an absolute disgrace. The ABC, should have been the moment that the ABC stood up and shone as an independent media outlet. They could show we're not affected The commercial outlets, you could argue, they're influenced by big pharma's cash. That was, and this is the argument why you need an independent ABC, because they will argue the alternate case. They'll put both sides of the argument to air. They cannot be influenced by big pharma's cash. But in this COVID period, the ABC has failed on their statutory duty about giving both sides of the argument air, and has simply reported bias, misinformation from start to finish on COVID, all to the advantage of big pharma.
Well, and the commercial media, they've been just as bad. I mean, there was the infamous Today Show interview where you went on in good faith, and Alison Langdon, who's now been promoted to a current affair, berated you for your views. And then fast forward to this year, we have Carl Stefanovic chatting with Dr. Nick Coatsworth, saying like, look, I've had enough of these vaccines. And Dr. Nick Coatsworth, our former deputy chief medical officer, saying like, look, you don't need to be afraid. You don't need to scare people anymore.
It was interesting. If you look at that original interview, you can see that Miss Langdon was there, being very aggressive, and you can see Carl Stefanovic actually sitting back, and you look at some of the faces he's pulling as this Alison Langdon embarrassed herself, made racist comments about Bangladeshis. I think there was a study done by, they said, but he's a Bangladeshi, as though Bangladeshis can't be good doctors. She should go out and apologise to all the Bangladeshis in parts of Sydney and Melbourne for that racist statement that she made. Her ignorance on the subject of early treatment with ivermectin and things like this. And I think one time she said, I went online overnight and I rebutted everything. I rebutted 50 peer-reviewed studies or something. Like it was absolutely fanciful for what she said. And I think history will record what an embarrassing and disgraceful interview that was. But if you look at it, Carl Stefanovic is there, and look at some of the faces Carl's saying. He knew he wanted to speak out against the compulsive nature of these vaccines. He wanted to speak out against the mandates, but he was being silenced by his bosses. They told him you can't say it, as it happened to so many other media personalities that I know personally that I've spoken with. They were silenced by their management when they wanted to talk out. They were told if you speak out, you'll be taken off air. And of course, the other week, Carl lets it drop that, I'm over, I'm done with the vaccines. And the fact that was allowed to go to air shows how much this debate has swung around over the past 12 months.
Now let's move to the New South Wales election campaign, where both the major party leaders, they certainly don't want to remind the voters at all about what they did to the people in 2020 and 2021 and what they're still doing to some people. But it's all very, the Dominic Perrottet and Chris Minns, it's all very, what's the word, gentlemanly on a superficial level. Like Chris Minns, he's trying to come across as a likable, friendly guy. So which is in contrast to Dan Andrews here, who's super aggressive, combative, really nasty person. And so I think Chris Minns is trying to say, look, I'm friendly, safe guy. Look, I play the AC/DC on the guitar. I'm really cool, but he doesn't have much of an agenda. And then you have Dom Perrottet. You said that he's sacrificed his principles. I mean, it's pretty much on everything. Like if you go back to his what he wrote on social media or for news organizations 5 years ago, it almost what he's saying now, it's almost like Matt Keen's got his hands up the back, making Dom Perrottet say these things. Matt Keen, his loyal deputy.
Well, Matt Keen, we nicknamed Matt Green here in New South Wales because he's a bloke that all his ideology and policy comes straight from the hardcore socialist left of the Green Party, but somehow or other he's now a treasurer of the state and in charge of any. But we just go back in a little bit in history in New South Wales. 12 years ago, the Labor Party was thrown out in New South Wales as a corrupt rabble. They had Christina, the hopelessly incompetent Christina Keneally was their leader. They tried to put this perfume scent across what was a stinking, corrupt cabal of Labor Party members that had been in there, that had rorted the place. They put Christina in, trying to throw an air of, trying to perfume over the stench. And she got something like it was in the 20% odd primary vote for the Labor Party. The Labor Party were absolutely smashed. And since then, they've just gone quiet for 12 years. But the same structure that we saw that led to that stinking kettle of fish, the corruption the Labor Party was when they lost the last thing, is still all there. They've just got different people there waiting to get their hands back on power, and the cycle will start all over again. So the New South Wales Liberals have basically had they've had like a free kick for the last several elections. And instead of getting on and doing the job that really needs to be done, securing the energy base of the state, making sure we don't go like the states of Victoria and Queensland, especially Victoria with the escalating electricity prices, destruction and crushing of human rights. The New South Wales government had the chance to do something like we've seen as Governor Ron DeSantis has done in Florida. They had a template there to follow in Ron DeSantis in Florida. And we've seen the results of what DeSantis, he's taken in 4 years, he took from what was a equivalent in our Australian two-party preferred terms to basically a 50-50. He just fell across the line at the previous election. At the recent election, Ron DeSantis has won that 40-60. He's had a 10% swing to him. Unprecedented 10% swing. Now, that should have been the template that the New South Wales government should have been following. But instead, they've gone woke. They've gone left. They've tried to appeal to people in the left that will never vote for the coalition in a month of Sundays. And it looks like now they're about to be thrown out of office. And we're going to have Labor parties everywhere on the mainland of Australia, in every mainland state, and also federally. This is you need the to people that are conservative voters to have the Labor Party having so much power across the nation. It must really be of a concern. And it's happened because we've had Liberal Party members and Liberal parties being infiltrated and infested by left-wing acolytes and left-wing agitators that have pushed the Liberal Party to the left, where they're unelectable and they no longer fight the fight, and they wonder why they're in opposition.
And you also had Dominic Perrottet make a captain's call to sign New South Wales up to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice to Parliament. Does the United Australia Party have a position on the voice?
We do. We oppose the referendum. We need to be very careful with any constitutional change that we make. This constitutional change will embed a racially discriminatory prohibition in our constitution. Our constitution should be blind to people's race or ethnicity. If you're an Australian, you're an Australian, you're an Australian. Full stop. That's how it should be. It is also based on a false assumption that somehow Indigenous Australians currently don't have a voice to Parliament. Now, firstly, we've got more, as percentage terms, we've got more Indigenous parliamentarians in the federal Parliament as a percentage terms than we have in percentage terms of Indigenous Australians. You got someone like Linda Burney, who has the ear of the Prime Minister every single day. So here we are, someone, a senior Indigenous politician with the ear of the Prime Minister, able to basically bring in legislation as she wants, making out that Indigenous people don't have a voice. This is so the concept is wrong. The concept is also wrong. It assumes that all Indigenous Australians speak with sort of this one voice. The wants and needs and political views on issues of Indigenous Australians are as wide as any other group. Like a group of Indigenous Australians in inner city Melbourne are completely different to a view of Indigenous Australians living up in the Torres Strait Islands. So the idea that you just have this one monolithic voice that speaks for all Indigenous Australians, again, is just a completely and utterly flawed concept. And finally, if Mr. Albanese wants to have somebody to advise his government from Indigenous Australians or Greek Australians, if you wanted a body of Greek Australians to advise you about issues that concern Greek Australians or Australians of Greek background, he can set it up. He doesn't. He can legislate it. He doesn't need to do this through the Constitution and lock it in through a constitutional change. So, my recommendation to anyone, I'll be voting no against this change. I'll be encouraging other people to vote no, and the United Australia Party will be actively campaigning for a no vote, because I believe this will actually do a lot of harm to race relations in Australia, and we certainly do not want to embed in our Constitution any racially discriminatory clauses or prohibitions.
Will the United Australia Party be active in the referendum, which Albanese, he's finally given a month, October, for the referendum?
Yeah, absolutely. We will go out and we will campaign against it. I'll campaign against it. I know Senator Babbitt from our Victorian Centre in the Federal Parliament will be campaigning against it, because we believe this is wrong for Australia. It's one of those short-term, feel-good, political things that come from time, and fashionable things that come in from time to time. But it's based on flawed concepts, and it should be rejected by the Australian people. And we will continue to speak out and raise our voices against it, so that people, at the very least, can consider both options of this debate.
Ralph Babbitt, our Senator for Victoria, he has been so excellent. I mean, you're an excellent speaker and well researched as well, and he is as well. He was.
Oh, Ralph's done a
excellent choice.
Ralph was, I call him. Look, he's done a remarkable job in a very short period of time. Look, I know you go into that federal parliament, and it's a pretty daunting place when you first get there, especially when you're not from any political background, which Ralph wasn't. To go, I know when you go in there, it took me a good 12 months to work out who's who, how all the processes work. It's a very steep learning curve to go in there. I was there for 12 years. Ralph's been there for less than a year, and he's really shown that he's going to be a great senator, hopefully for many, many years to come.
And he is absolutely in sync with the United Australia Party platform. I mean, we know the history of the first lot of when they were called Palmer United Party senators. The saying is that in politics, a party movement is always better the second time around. I mean, we've seen that with Pauline Hanson, Malcolm Roberts, and One Nation, and it looks to be the same with the United Australia Party.
Look, it's the way our media covers politics in this nation, the legislation that we have in place, it makes it pretty hard to break through the two-party system, especially the way the media cover the elections is almost like a US presidential elections. It's it was Albanese versus Morrison, and now it's Dutton versus Albanese. It's very hard for a third minor party to get a look in. But look, I think that's changing. I think we've seen the Liberal Party basically walk away from what were its traditional values, and more people every day are coming across to, whether it's United Australia Party, the Liberal Democrats, One Nation. Ultimately, we guys which I would say on the right side of the Liberal Party, we've ultimately got to get our act together and make sure that we're all working together. And I think we are seeing that now in the federal parliament, where you've got Malcolm Roberts and Ralph Babbitt working, Malcolm Roberts from One Nation, working so closely together with Ralph. You see that cooperation in the federal parliament, and you see Liberal members that are actually upholding their oath of office and upholding the values of the Liberal Party. I'm talking about senators like Gerard Rennick from Queensland, Senator Alex Antic from South Australia. You can see how these guys are actually, we talk about you see the picture of them sitting together I saw in the picture. I said a few good men. I think it's got a couple of 100,000 likes on one of my social media feeds. But it's true to see them all from different parties, all actually concerned about the welfare of this nation, are prepared to take on the wokeness and the political correctness. Really gives us a good base to work for the future.
Now let's go into focus on the Upper House Legislative Council contest in New South Wales. So, it's different electoral system than Victoria, which is 8 5-member regions. The only state that still uses group voting tickets, while in New South Wales it's the whole state, and every upper house member is elected for 8 years. So 21 of the 42 are up every 4 years. Now, Group B is the United Australia Party couldn't get registered for New South Wales. And if you look at Group A, which Lyle Shelton is the lead candidate, Family First couldn't either. Now, I know the answer to this question because I was in the Liberal Democrats for many years. So I know how grueling the New South Wales electoral process, registering a party in New South Wales is for new parties.
Yeah, look, this is interesting. In Victoria, if you're under our electoral system, you have to register your party not only nationally, but you have to register it separately in every single state. So even if you're registered federally, that doesn't count in the states. You've got to register separately. So in Victoria, we were able to register the party, a month out from the election campaign. New South Wales has this arcane rule, again to protect the incumbent Liberal and Labor parties, that you can't register a new party within 18 months of the election campaign. So effectively, even though we've got a party structure, we've got party members, because we didn't fill out the correct paperwork 18 months ago, we can't contest this coming New South Wales state election as United Australia Party. So we're contesting it simply as an independent team. And that way you went through the on the ballot paper. Again, in New South Wales, the upper house is statewide. So everyone across New South Wales will get the same ballot for the upper house. You've got an option of voting what they call above the line or below the line. Simply, if you vote below the line, your vote is more powerful. You're able to allocate the preferences where you want them to go. You must, if you're voting below the line, you must number at least 15 squares from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all up to 15. You can number more. The more squares that you number, the more powerful your vote is. So I'd encourage people to vote below the line. Hopefully, consider putting my independent team first. Vote 1 through to 9, but there are other good freedom-based parties in there. And let's hope we can give this, people consider voting for us at this coming election. Because, as we said, the major parties here in New South Wales are just a complete and utter rabble. And you need the upper house of Parliament to be a real check and balance on the power of the lower house. Remember, that was the traditional Westminster system. Remember, the Westminster system we inherited had the House of Lords in the UK. So you've got the House of Commons and the House of Lords. And the House of Lords was meant to be a check and balance on the power of the lower house. Now, when we set up our national parliament, our upper house was meant to represent the states. That's why we had New South Wales had the same number of senators as did Tasmania or South Australia, because it was meant to protect the interests of the states. But in federal politics, and the same ways in the states, those upper houses have become basically political partisan upper houses where it gets controlled by either the Labor Party or the Liberal Party. I believe it's very important that the upper houses of Parliament are controlled by independent members or of the minor parties that will actually scrutinise the legislation and will hold the government of the day, the lower house, to account. That is what you want in a Westminster system. And if you just vote for the same party in the upper house as you do the lower house, you are just giving a lot of these corrupt politicians a rubber stamp where the checks, balance, and scrutiny of a Westminster system are thrown out the window.
And obviously, other choices for freedom-loving New South Welsh people and conservatives and libertarians. Obviously, the big juggernaut, the protest vote could go to One Nation, led by Mark Latham, because he's certainly set the standard, holding those ministers to account. And then there's obviously John Ruddick, the lead candidate for the Liberal Democrats, another ex-Liberal. He wrote the book on Make the Liberal Party Great Again, but in the end decided it couldn't be made great.
Look, both John Ruddick and Mark Latham are people I hold in the highest respect. I hope they both, as well as myself, I hope they both get elected at this election campaign. I also hope Mark's number 2, a lady called Tanya Mihalik, that was a former Labor MP for the seat down here of Bankstown, that walked away in the Labor Party in disgust because of the corruption that was going on there. But one thing I say to people, no matter which of these minor freedom parties that you vote for, vote below the line issue and use your preferences. Because if you just vote, say for example, if you just put one above the line for the Liberal Democrats, if the Liberal Democrats are unsuccessful, your vote's lost. It doesn't go anywhere. Even if they are successful, the hangover quota, so you need, I think it's about 4.5% to get a quota up. So even the hangover vote that could go and help get another freedom candidate elected gets lost. So my recommendation is, however you want to vote below the line, make your vote as powerful as it possibly can, number at least 15 squares, more if you'd like, and make sure your preferences are allocated to other like-minded freedom parties.
Now, when you were campaigning in Victoria last year at the federal election, you were assaulted on the back of the head with an egg by a totalitarian thug. Well, it was what you call a targeted political hit. And I noticed that the woman who did it, she stepped back immediately, in case you're inclined to or Fraser Anning her and give her a few slaps.
Yes.
But you took the moral high ground and called her a disgrace to democracy. And they made quite a quick getaway, but they were eventually hunted down by authorities. But
At
all that
great expense to the taxpayer, the police resources that would have gone into it on the day. On the day, there was, I think, a dozen police officers. But this could have ended in a complete melee. This woman and 2 accomplices, she stalked me. So it was premeditated. It wasn't something to spirit, but premeditated assault. They stalked me in a public park. They snuck up behind me to bash me across the back of the head. Oh yeah, it's an egg. It's an egg. She gave me a whack across the back of the head. The fact that it was an egg makes no difference. You can't whack people across the back. It was political violence, and that is a fascist ideology, that you use violence against your political opponents, and that's what these people they call themselves Antifa, anti-fascists. These people are fascists to their bootlace and their black boots that they wear. If you use violence against your political opponents, you are a fascist, and that's what these people are. And amazingly, the resources that the police then had to hunt them down, check them out, take them to court, do all the briefings in the court, right? And guess what the fine was? Right? $300 and no conviction recorded.
That's a fraction of a COVID fine. I mean, they were some of them several $1,000s if you like had a gathering of more than 2 people in public, and they assault a member of parliament, and it does have an impact, hitting anyone with anything from the back of the head, and it's meant to have a chilling effect as well. That's the point of political violence, and that's the minuscule fine for that attack.
What I wrote to the Victorian Police and asked them to appeal against the conviction or the slap on with a wet lettuce leaf that this woman received, because her accomplices, right? She had 2 accomplices in this that were filming the incident. Got nothing, not even a fine against them. Yet they should have been equally as part of the planned assault that they did. But look, the real danger on this is the precedent that it sets. So what that magistrate has now sent a message that if there's a politician that you don't agree with, that you can sneak up, you can plan an attack on them, sneak up behind them, hit them across the back of the head, be so brazen about it that you film it to post it on social media and make a hero of yourself amongst all your fascist mates, and you get a $300 fine and no conviction recorded. That magistrate has basically sent a signal that it is open season on politicians in Victoria, that we are punching bags, and we can be assaulted if someone doesn't like our policies. This is a very, very dangerous precedent that has been set. And I'd also like to consider the question, if it was, just say it was Dan Andrews, someone snuck up behind and hit, or Anthony Albanese, or one of the other Greens leaders, or Adam Bandt, that someone snuck up behind and hit them. Do you reckon they would have only got a $300 fine? Special treatment for you bashed a Conservative, that's okay. That's a question we might
supporters on Twitter would demand that those people be strung up.
That's right. Yeah, you'd be across the front page of how to. So it is a shocking precedent the Victorian courts have set. I'm very disappointed that the Victorian Police didn't make an appeal against the ineffectiveness of the fine, because they're the ones who have to deal with incidents down the track that say it's okay. So you can sneak up behind Dan Andrews, bash him across the back of the head, and get a $300 fine. That's what the courts have effectively said.
Which is
shocking. Absolutely, it should not matter what political party that you come from. No, I'm certainly not encouraging any violence. We should be. Our politics should all be about the contest of ideas, about debate, not about bashing those and not about violence and thuggery, which unfortunately this group appears to see how they conduct their business.
Oh, well, we saw how emboldened these they are fascists, these so-called anti-fascists, both in Melbourne and Sydney. In Sydney, there was this, they called themselves the Community Action Group for Rainbow Rights, attacking that Christian Lives Matter rally. And then here in Melbourne, you had the Socialist Alternative wanting to assault 2 groups. Obviously, the Let Women Speak on the steps of Parliament, and the neo-Nazi provocateurs who were also in the vicinity as well, and they were only held back by the Victoria Police.
Yeah, well, again, this shows, we've got to stamp down on all political violence in this country. We've got, and this is also brought on away by what we see of this sort of cancel culture that, if I disagree, we will see it coming from the left side of politics. As if they disagree with you, it's shut up. Censor the person. Those that agree with them, they should be shut up. They should be censored. They should be deplatformed off social media. We don't want to hear their ideas. And if we speak, it's okay for us to bash them because we don't want to hear their ideas. When you allow that that sort of ideology to permeate in society, which it currently is, the only result is going to be more violence on the streets, and that's not good. We've got to get back to the situation. Like, I enjoy people debating, whether it's a subject of climate change or COVID. I love the challenge of the debate. I encouraging people, let's have public debates about these issues, because that's how you come to the best results. And and often when you hear an alternate opinion on something, you may dismiss 99% of it, but there's often one little percent of it that helps you sharpen your argument, fine-tune your argument, fine-tune your policies. And that's why we've got to get back to a society that actually debates issues rather than like this shut up, cancel culture, will smash you if you're wrong or censor you.
Now, one curious question I have, it's quite a, you could call it a left field question, but how did the United Australia Party's awesome jingle, "That's My Type of Party" by the Polling Booths, which even people who hate the party,
That's right,
hate
yes.
you, hate Clive Palmer, they admit that they love it. How did it get composed? And like, who were the musicians
Well, it's
and
funny.
singers?
We're looking for like a campaign song or a campaign jingle. We approached we had some pretty very popular musical tunes, that we offered a lot of money for to have as our campaign, both Australia and overseas, to have it, if we could use them as our campaign jingle. And these people knocked us back. So we just had some local guys that came up with the tune. I tell you, it was better. It was better than some of the other ones that we're prepared to pay a lot of money for. So it's that one there. But that's my kind of party. It's a great. It truly is a great fun. In fact, I was talking to a couple of young kids today, and they love country music. Oh, I love that song. I love your song, sort of thing. So it's really an inspiring bit of an inspiring tune. And I remember we played it at our campaign launch, and it raised the roof of the place.
They should have won an ARIA for that. It was
Yes.
that good. I know that the party released a mashup, a video mashup to the song for the Victorian campaign. Is there going to be one for the New South Wales campaign?
Yeah, look, we're the New South Wales campaign's pretty low key. So we can't use the United Australia Party name to we can't have it on the ballot paper. We can't effectively use it, which is very disappointing. Under this absurd sort of 18 months rule. To think that you think about how fluid the political situation is today, with how many new issues are coming along. To think that in a democracy that you can't form a new political party within 18 months of the election is just crazy. It's just anti-democratic stuff, and that's unfortunately we've got here in New South Wales.
And there's no denying that'll affect your vote, because people they still vote, look for the party name, and all they'll see is
people often complain how much money we spent at the last federal election, but the reality is that what's vital is not how much money you spend, but how much actually airtime you get in the media, right? And we were basically black banned. The ABC wouldn't discuss us at all. The only segment the ABC did on us was one absurd segment where they accused us of giving away free hats by targeting non-speaking English people. So we could, the ABC said, oh, well, we were out there and we said, oh, that person looks like they're a non-speaking English person. Go and give them a hat because they won't know what the freedom logo means, sort of thing. The ABC gives you a black ban, and the mainstream media gave us a black ban other than telling lies about us, defaming us, making up false stories. I remember even the Australian newspaper, a couple of days out before the election, did this big exclusive interview about. They went through our candidates' background and found out one of our candidates had been in a fight in a pub when they were 21, and
I remember that.
And someone else had an AVO against them, 30 years ago, sort of thing. This was this big thing. At the same time, they're cheering on companies like Pfizer that had billions of dollars of criminal fines against them, and saying, "Oh, it's okay, trust them." With going after our candidates. So it's not easy to overcome. When the mainstream media runs a campaign directly, targets you and runs directly against you and doesn't give you a fair run election campaign.
And the electoral laws in Victoria, they limit the ability of minor parties to advertise with the $4,000 donation cap for the 4 years. So that's over the four.
There's ways for the major parties, the Labor and Liberal Party, to get around all that. Right? So the major parties can get around those laws, those electoral donation laws, and have millions of dollars worth of funds flowing into their campaign coffers. But it's different rules for the major parties as it is for the minor parties. Effectively, the implementation of those rules, which again locks in this incumbency of the Liberal-Labor Party duopoly and makes it much harder for the minor parties to break through.
Well, good luck for next Saturday. I'm hoping, obviously, I don't get a vote as a Victorian, but obviously what states do, especially big states by New South Wales, influences what happens around the nation. So if there is a big pro-freedom crossbench, then that'll be a good thing regardless of who's premier, because there's really, you basically get big government blue or big government red on Saturday. So the upper house.
I have one final message. Look, whoever you vote for in the lower house, which is your local area, please consider my independent group or the other independent freedom-based parties that are there, because it is contrary to our governance of our country to have the upper house as a rubber stamp for the lower house that doesn't scrutinise the legislation. And that's what will happen if the Labor Party win, the Labor Party control the upper house. You just have these ticks on Labor Party policy where you want that scrutiny. And same for the Liberal Party. You want the scrutiny to their policies. You want the ministers to be scrutinised, because that doesn't happen in the lower house. The legislation just goes through. You've got to have that check and balance in your upper house. So I'd appeal to anyone that's voting in the New South Wales election. Please consider myself, and if you don't, please consider either any of the other minor parties or independents in that upper house to prevent that concentration of power and to prevent one party controlling both houses of parliament.
Well, we'll be covering the results as they roll in from when the polls close on 6 p.m. I'll extend an open invite if you want to call in, dial in throughout the night. You'd be more than welcome to.
It'll certainly be an interesting, another interesting night. Will be interesting to see how, especially what happens in Western Sydney, where the Liberal Party, locked so many people down, applied different standards. We'll be looking at what happened in someone like Matt Keane's seat, the energy minister, who's done such damage to the Liberal Party, has done such damage to the infrastructure of the state, our power generation capacities. Who's almost, his policies of the Liberal Party almost virtually guarantee blackouts. They put off we've got, like, remember in Victoria how you closed down, what was your big power station, the Hazelwood Power Station down there. Right. We've got a similar thing happening here in New South Wales. They're closing what's known as the Liddell Power Station, but it's only closing, surprise, surprise, a couple of weeks after the election campaign. And after that, we're going to see electricity prices in New South Wales skyrocket. There's going to be risks of blackouts, this winter. And again, this is because of the failed policies of the Liberal Party not standing up. So that's Matt Keane's seat. Very interested to see how he goes in his vote.
Then there's obviously, one group the ABC does promote is the Teals. Thankfully, they didn't do well in the Victorian state election, but they're a very noisy bunch in the New South Wales election campaign.
Yes, they are. Look, it'll be interesting to see how they go. Look, I think people are turning off the Teals. They realised that they were basically, elected under a fraud. The Teals are, we're for integrity and we're for, fight corruption in government and transparency. Let me give you one example. We've got this Quovax study in Queensland being shut down by the Queensland government, an absolute disgrace. This should be one of the most important issues in the nation today. It's a study of 10,000 people, one of the largest in the world, to look at the vaccine safety and efficacy over a 5-year period. It's being shut down because they don't like the data that's coming through. And yet we hear not a peep from the Teals. Here we are seeing corruption, breach of integrity, and the Teals are not interested whatsoever. It just shows them up for what they are. They were just lackeys of big renewable investors that ran around thinking, believe we're the greatest virtue signals you've ever seen in my life.
And don't get us, either of us, started on Monique Ryan down in Kugong. Miss,
Where's your mask?
Put your mask.
Where's your mask?
Which, she was,
put your mask on. Put your mask on.
She was snapped maskless again at the footy on Thursday night with 88,000 people.
These people are just complete hypocrites. They put a show on, and what is it? So they have this real totalitarian streak about them. I like this, that they are so superior and they are so virtuous, and you'll do what I was told. Like, goodness me, you really don't want to see these people anywhere near the levers of power.
Oh, people mocked the United Australia Party ads because it said, Craig Kelly, your next Prime Minister. But then, Monique Ryan said that she wants to be Prime Minister. That certainly made me shut up.
The thing is, we were running 150. We were running candidates in every lower house seat. We were giving it a go. We were giving it a crack. We weren't going to die wondering. And it was theoretically possible that we had polling at certain stages showing that we were in the mid 20% in many electorates across the country. If we had been able to keep the momentum going, we would have won lower house seats, and who knows how many lower house seats we could have won. So we were actually in with a theoretical chance. Now you can laugh about, you can make jokes about that we weren't successful, but we were with a theoretical chance. So what Monique Ryan, what she's supposedly an independent, it just shows these people are not independents at all. They're part of this sort of like what I call, I think, the Gucci Greens. Is a good example of them. They're sort of, they'll go into coalition with the Greens and she'd be Prime Minister. God help us if that ever happened in our nation.
Yeah, I shuddered when I heard that. But we could critique them all night. But we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for returning to WilmsFront, and you're welcome on the Unshackled platform anytime.
Great to be. Hope to see you again very soon.
Take care and good luck.
Thanks.
All right, everybody. That's another WilmsFront show. And of course, tomorrow night is Tim's News Explosion, 8:30 p.m. Melbourne time, on the Unshackled's YouTube channel and the WilmsFront Odyssey and Tim Wilms D Live. Obviously, I'll be discussing the aftermath of the Let Women Speak event in Melbourne, which included the sideshow with the Socialist Alternative, pro-transgender protesters, and of course the National Socialist Network turning up with their sign saying "Destroy Pedo Filth." So obviously that has been dominating a lot of discussion, and I noticed that it was great to meet afterwards Lady of Shalott and I'm a Stupid Moron with a big butt. We had a drink afterwards, and I'm a Stupid Moron with Big Butt has just informed me that there is breaking news that there is a move in the Liberal Party to expel Moira Deeming. So let's just have a look at this. So opposition leader John Prosciutto will move to expel controversial Liberal MP Moira Deeming from the parliamentary party room after she attended a rally that has been associated with neo-Nazis. So again, the guilt by association stuff. And so It has here that this is a statement by Prosciutto. The violence, prejudice, and hate that these protesters conveyed by their odorous actions will never be acceptable in our state. I condemn them and commit to opposing such hate wherever it may exist, Prosciutto said in a statement on Sunday night. This afternoon, I met with Moira Deeming MP, who attended yesterday's rally. I discussed her involvement in organising, promoting, and participating in a rally with speakers and other organisers who themselves have been publicly associated with far-right extremist groups, including neo-Nazi activists. Really? That's not, that's news to me. At our meeting, I informed Ms. Deeming that I'll move a motion at the next party room meeting to expel her as a member of the Parliamentary Liberal Party, as her position is untenable. I mean, she was pre-selected by the branch members of the Western Metro region. So that's basically John Prosciutto is trying to coerce the parliamentary party room into kicking out a, well, democratically pre-selected and democratically elected Liberal MLC. So you can see my report on the day, and also Margot Huss's report as well on the unshackled.net, and also on the Unshackled's YouTube and Unshackled's Odyssey. You can see my highlights package. I managed to condense 2 hours of footage down to 8 minutes of all of the what would you call the confrontational bits there. And so obviously I will cover what happened in Sydney with the Christian Lives Matter protesters being attacked by the coalition community action group for rainbow rights, which is another socialist alternative front group. Lucas Genius, our Antifa socialist expert, he has written extensively about the socialist Marxist link of all these groups. We'll also talk about that traitor Paul Keating, apologist, simp, sycophant for the Chinese Communist Party. Be talking about his disgraceful performance at the National Press Club last week. We'll also talk about the banking crisis in the US and the possible arrest of Donald Trump. So there's so much to talk about tomorrow night. Thank you all for joining the discussion tonight. I noticed a few comments. A lot of you wanted to get into more United Australia Party policy. Obviously, there was only an hour, and it was, well, a lot of it was sort of catching up with what Craig has experienced over the last few years, and also where the United Australia Party is at as well. Of course, you can always go to the United Australia Party website to see they're still the same policies that the United Australia Party have. So you can look it up there, what they stand for there. That it's all the same, and it's pretty. If you followed Craig Kelly for many years, it's pretty obvious what he stands for. I mean, he's been very vocal in the Parliament, and also in the media as well. Well, when he was invited by, I don't think he's been on Sky News for years. I think after they fired Alan Jones, they weren't prepared to have Craig Kelly on at all. But that's all for tomorrow night. So thank you again for watching. Make sure you check out the unshackled.net. If you don't want to send through a super chat, you can take out an Unshackled membership at the unshackled.net/membership. And also, I'm a stupid moron with a big butt. Thank you for the super drink yesterday after shouting me a drink. That was very nice. So it was bronze It's bronze $5 per month to support the Unshackled, silver $10 per month, gold $25 per month, platinum $50 per month. So that's all for tonight, and I'll see you all again tomorrow night, 8:30 p.m. Melbourne time on the same channels. So remember, stay safe, stay sane, stay free, stay stay sane, and also, yeah, just try and stay positive as well. I would say as well. That's my final message for tonight. All right, good night, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to WilmsFront. Visit timwilms.com to view the archive of episodes, and keep visiting theunshackled.net to view all our shows, and to keep up with the latest real news and analysis.